Hello and welcome to the Fintech Finance Virtual Arena. I'm your host, Doug Mackenzie. And on today's session, we've got a really insightful, really talking point, because we're going to be looking at how cloud technology is actually improving operational efficiencies from institutions big to small. And joining me today, I actually have Jason Ang from SmartStream. Jason, how are you doing here today?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Jason, for our audience who might not be aware, could you give our viewers a bit of background to yourself, your role at SmartStream, and even SmartStream itself?
Well, sure. I'm a product manager with TLM Collateral Management. I've been with the product for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I was at Deutsche Bank for 18 years in various capacities. I was VP in charge of collateral management operations in the UK. In terms of SmartStream, SmartStream is built on over 40 years worth of experience. 70 of the world's top 100 banks, capital markets, and buy-side firms and corporations rely on SmartStream's next generation technologies and services for mission-critical functions.
I mean, you are right at the heart of financial services. So, Jason, thank you so much for joining us here today. So I've got to ask, what are some of the opportunities for financial institutions to adopt cloud systems? And why have the traditional ones been so slow to do so?
Well, that's a two-part question. So we'll kind of talk about the first one first, and that's opportunities. So for us, we've created our cloud or on-demand offerings because we know that there are some key value propositions that are attractive to our clients. So in terms of cost, there's this mutualization of personnel and hardware. So instead of each organization having personnel that is assigned to this particular hardware or software, we actually maintain it. So this mutualizes the costs and allows us to provide a very compelling use case. Internal hardware costs can also be very expensive to maintain given the current structure of data centers at our clients. The second thing is expertise. So here it's about risk reduction. So rather than having like one or two people within their organization knowing our software in each of their organizations, we have a full team who knows how best to run and develop the software. So our clients then can rely on us to take care of those things for them. And the third is scalability. You can increase or decrease your capacity as needed without having to physically add more machines, and basically you pay for what you use.
That's absolutely incredible. And I think that's going to be so critical for financial institutions going forward, because I think, is it fair to say, has scalability become the key KPI behind using cloud finance now?
Well, actually, let's take the other part of that second that question you asked earlier, if you don't mind.
No, of course.
So I think that question was to look at why people are wary of stepping into a cloud type of environment. I think there's a couple things here. Security, I think, is paramount in people's minds, right? The idea of penetration by hackers or players that are unscrupulous, right? So I think that's why we choose the best partners to be able to work together, because again, in this mutualization kind of situation, the AWSs or the Azures are going to be spending billions in making sure that their environments are secure, right? As compared to each provider basically spending a certain amount of money to be able to then have that kind of capability. The other part of security is the commingling of data. So I think there are a lot of organizations that basically commingle and pool all their clients' data into one single system. And I think the fear here is, especially with our largest clients, the idea of data breaches or leaks that might happen because all the data is actually commingled, but logically separated. And again, if it's logically separated, an error in coding or such like could actually, unfortunately, result in a data breach, right? So this is where we use single tenant virtual private clouds. Our data is never commingled with other clients' data. Each client has their own virtual private cloud, all right? Then we want to talk about control, right? So the idea of handing over control to an outside provider, I think sometimes is quite scary because of things like forced upgrades. So if you think about like Facebook, right? When you log on, they force you to upgrade. Now, obviously, it's a consumer product, so it doesn't really matter if you're forced to upgrade. but it doesn't really work for institutions that are regulated stringently, right? So in this case, right, if let's say the application that you're on, forces you to upgrade, you may not have enough time to do all your testing, your connectivity, your integration tests, and of course that's a bit too much risk for some of the institutions out there. And so for us, we don't force people to upgrade, right? We work with our partners to on their schedule. The other thing is around quality issues. Again, in the topic for control. There's sometimes not enough time to test because of some of the larger players have predetermined schedules on what needs to happen when. So, any breaks or issues are sort of out of their hands here. And then finally, there's risk, right? Risk in terms of, the financial well-being of their partner, right? So, is there a concern where that partner might not be well funded or have any issues with their organization? There's the idea of expertise of their partner, and there's also the fear of downtime that's outside of their control.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, I think, some of the reasons why people are wary about going onto cloud. But there are things that I think we do to make sure that we mitigate the risk, because we do have quite a lot of our clients coming onto our on-demand system.
Incredible. And I think that's going to be so important. And going back to what I was kind of referring is scalability seems to be the key KPI for a lot of these institutions. You can't grow if your architecture can't enable it. So do you agree with what I was saying there? Is scalability the key KPI for organizations that maybe, I think, you've worked at a few yourself? What's that insight like?
I think it depends on the organization. For some, absolutely, totally agree with you. For others, what they might want is a turnkey solution, right? So they might be small, and rather than having a team trying to maintain a group that basically focuses on making sure that this kind of software is being run, they want to focus on their business. And so in those cases, it seems to me that they want those kinds of clients want a turnkey solution, and some of those smaller clients may not necessarily need to scale dramatically, right? But I think for either case where there is a need for scalability, or where there's not a need for scalability, I think in the end, either case, you need expertise, you need quality, you need stability, and you want to make sure that you can control your costs. So I think it's a KPI, but I wouldn't say it's the KPI, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Now, with that in mind, then, I think if scalability is just one thing, I still think the main part is just running these institutions is a job in itself. So can you tell me more about how cloud technology can improve the operational efficiency at traditional large institutions?
I think here it allows you to focus on your business, right? You basically, have a team that basically focuses on taking care of the infrastructure, right? Which then, obviously mutualizes the cost and the infrastructure, right? So for example, using us, who then use AWS, and you have the confidence that there are people who know the software running the software, right? So in that sense, you've got operational efficiency because you don't need to maintain those kinds of teams. The other thing is that you can potentially get rapid deployment and upgrades and metrics as well, that are I guess best practices across the industry for that particular software. So I think yes, absolutely, there is a lot of grounds for operational efficiency at traditional banks.
Now, I think the biggest change to operations in maybe the last 100 years, I would say, in banking has probably been the pandemic. So has cloud-based technology actually enabled financial institutions to grapple with their efficiency, with their just day-to-day operations during the pandemic better than, the question I always want to ask is, what would have happened if the pandemic had hit finance in 2008?
Yeah, I think that it all depends on how the cloud technology is administered. I think that there's a lot of benefits that were realized because it's already being run remotely, right? And so, people that have been administering and running these kind of things are used to what I think the pandemic sort of forced a lot of traditional organizations to do, which is basically run their organization remotely. And on top of that, obviously, in some of our cases, the volumes skyrocketed, right? So here, this is where that thought about scalability suddenly comes to the fore, right? Where you can basically add on more capacity without any issues. So I think it's really helped some of our clients be able to manage the pandemic better.
That's absolutely brilliant, and so imperative to millions of people to to be able to hear that, to know that even if another wave of pandemic hits, ultimately the technology behind a bank or a financial player now is secure enough in that remote nature. I think that's a massive strength to the industry. Now, speaking of that remote nature, are cloud-based systems actually safer than on-prem solutions? It's so typical of maybe the traditional banks to want to do everything in-house. Has that changed now?
I think it would depend on the execution and the risk tolerance of the client, right? If we think about the perspective here, right? Again, like I mentioned, these cloud providers, right? Like AWS and Azure spend billions, right, making sure that they are secure, that they are scalable, right? There's teams upon teams of experts in those organizations, and we partner with them, right? So in that sense, we create use cases with them, as a trusted partner. So the idea then is, we want to create a better environment, right, with the best people for our clients. So can you say that it's safer than on-prem? I would say it depends on the execution, but for us, we absolutely want to make it better for our clients.
I think that's excellent. And can you tell us how you've been bringing up this notion of working together with with your clients? It's very much not just you open up this digital transformation and it's done and that's it. It sounds very much like a kind of organic kind of transformation. So, if we stick to the cloud-based technology, has that enabled organizations to continue to collaborate or even look to collaborate and partner in ways they probably hadn't before? And if they had been, in more effective ways than had been traditionally done?
I think we bring a lot of collective expertise to the table, right? And it's not just expertise in terms of technology. It's not just expertise in terms of our experience. It's also our expertise in being able to collaborate with, and have good relationships with our clients, right? So we've got, in collateral management, we've got decades-long partnerships with some of our clients. And so there's a deep level of trust that we've established with them already. And given that each organization has its unique needs, we make sure we drive our solutions to help those organizations. But again, because we have a large suite of clients, we then take the best of breed and implement that so that, the idea is that all of our clients start to benefit from this collaboration.
I think that's absolutely excellent. Now, we mentioned, obviously, we've been talking about the nature of the technology and also the nature of how SmartStream works with some of your clients, but can you tell us a bit more about what SmartStream is working on currently?
So we're working on a whole bunch of different things. I think for me, I'm looking at data holistically across organizations, right? What do people use our data for? And how can we use data to help enhance our processes and our clients' processes? So, for example, the idea of inventory or and collateral management, across the organization, right? There's liquidity questions. There's the best placement of, and use of this collateral, right? So, the idea of best use of assets across the organization, and then providing data, right, through APIs like, to downstream and upstream systems for, eligibility to determine pre-trade or post-trade optimization, right? And then, surfacing these insights, by either, having the data be in a data lake, or, in a location where then organizations can then use, cloud, capabilities, to scale up AI, and have, insights into, the cross organizational data. I think that's one of the things that, we're really looking forward to working on, because, we've got a very, very powerful innovations lab that, is driving a lot of AI through our solutions.
I think hearing about that it's the ultimate step in collaboration is that cross connectivity between organizations that have once been siloed, once been castles, and they're now going to be able to talk to each other in new ways. That, to me, speaks volumes of where we've come to when it comes to, for instance, open banking in Europe, and maybe just this drive for openness. And I'm really excited to hear some of the projects that come out from this new movement. So Jason, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing all these insights, because when you're very customer focused, you don't get to see these technologies behind, and naturally to be able to hear it from your perspective, it's been an absolute pleasure. So Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time and for having me. Take care.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. And also to all our viewers, you can catch the rest of the series and much more over at ffnews.com, and of course YouTube and LinkedIn, where I'll see you in the comments. So once again, Jason, thank you very much, and goodbye.